Hey guys, Alex here from SPP, and today I'm joined by my colleague Dian,
Hi everyone.
as well as Kenny here, who's going to be telling us about his business.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, welcome aboard.
Can you just give us just a rundown of what you've been doing in the past few years and what kind of productized services you have experience with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 27. I graduated in 2016 with accounting and finance majors, actually. It's nothing entrepreneurial at all. Accounting is often seen as like the opposite of entrepreneurship. So my experience has been I started off with an agency. This was in college, my senior year. It was a Instagram marketing agency. So it was very difficult because I would have to do everything. I would manage the clients, I would find the clients, I would do all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, I would try to make things personalized for each client. So that's kind of like the new entrepreneur tries to make the product perfect for everyone instead of actually making an actual product. That's kind of typical in the agency type of environment. You try to make sure that your service is optimized for each client, but you don't really optimize for yourself as a business. So I learned that the hard way, spending countless hours every day managing everything, doing sales calls, working with our employees. It was just very, very stressful. So I came across the idea of trying to make this service into a product. So the service itself was Instagram marketing, but I realized there were certain things that I was better at in regards to Instagram marketing, growing followers, doing specific actions that would gain our clients' engagement. So I doubled down on that. I focused only on that. I cut out everything else that I was doing, including making graphic design for clients and handling their accounts for them. And I was only doing that one thing that I was really good at. That had some downsides, of course. Some clients would cancel. Some clients didn't like that, so they had to leave us. But it also gave us very many positives too. One of the biggest positives was that we can just focus explicitly and strictly on that one area that we're good at, which meant that I could now hire people. I can train them to be really good at that one area. And I could scale a lot easier with a product that everything was upfront. We would tell our clients exactly what we're doing, what we weren't doing. Clients would know, right, looking at our website, whether or not it was a good fit for them. So you wouldn't have to, customize our sales pitches, all that kind of stuff. And through that, I was able to scale the company. And, also very interesting for me, instead of spending, 10 plus hours every day on the business, I could only spend, it got to the point where I was spending maybe like 3 hours per month on the business because I had the processes, the systems, the employees in place that could handle all my responsibilities. And that would be pretty much impossible, if not impossible, through a traditional agency approach in which the CEO or the owner would have to customize everything for their clients. So that was my first venture into making a productized service. I liked it so much that after I sold that business in 2018, I decided to found a business that was similar in the model sense, but different kind of industries. The next business that I founded was called Delegate. It was a graphic design service that traditionally those kinds of services they're more like an agency approach in which the client has custom requests, and then the owner or the founder would then have to alert their team about that, and there's a huge process that involves the owner. But through my experience as being a productized service owner in the past, I decided to once again productize the service, and through that I was able to eventually scale it to about 60 people on the team. I sold that business in April of this year, 2021, and yeah, those are my past two ventures in the productized service industry. Doing a few other things too, but yeah, that's my experience in that.
All right, so Kenny, I was wondering if you knew about the term productized services before starting to do this business, or this is something that you were newly introduced in and decided to go with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess now the term productized service is a lot more common now than it was, at least when I was in the business of that. But no, I didn't actually know about that. It kind of happened by accident, I guess you could say. It was more so built off the desire to not have to be involved in the business. Like I mentioned, I was spending easily 10 plus hours a day, if not more, pretty much, 5 to 6 to 7 days a week. And that became too much. I couldn't really even step away from the business. I was always checking my emails. And that was because I didn't have delegation in place. And I couldn't have delegation in place because I didn't have the right processes, procedures, and I couldn't have that because the service wasn't really one in which I could do that because it was a very customized service, traditional agency type approach. So I wasn't really thinking of terms like productized service, but I knew I had to do something to make it so that I could delegate these tasks. And I just kind of figured, why not simplify things? It's super complex right now. Let's simplify. Let's make it into repeatable processes that my employees could do for me. And one thing kind of led to the other, and then eventually we just focused on one specific thing that I could then train, teach, and scale and grow at that point. But yeah, it was kind of by I guess by accident in that sense, but also by design in the sense that I knew I had to do something differently because I was going to burn out pretty soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah, you mentioned the burnout. I think that's an interesting point because sometimes I come across solopreneurs who want to scale to an agency, but they're afraid that they might burn out because they will work like 7 days a week. How did you start to delegate? Because I think with the Instagram service, you started hiring contractors probably just so you can scale it up. But how did you set up the processes so they can do the work they have to do for you, basically?
Yeah, definitely. Initially, I was spending lots of time, and I think that any entrepreneur will have to spend, many hours initially setting things up, unless you have, many dollars of funding and you're able to instantly scale initially or hire initially. You're probably going to do most of the things yourself initially just to get started. So that's kind of like within the field, but of course that's not good to do forever. I do think there is merit in doing it all initially because that allows you to then understand exactly what the business needs, what the pain points are. And then once you understand that, you can then start to create those processes in place that employees can delegate. So for me, like initially, it just kind of happened, like I mentioned, by chance, because I was too tired and sick of doing everything myself. So I started by just writing down exactly what I was doing for these tasks, because a lot of these tasks, as we became more productized, became very, very repeatable, simple in the sense that they could be followed at least. So I decided that instead of trying to call my employees and tell them over the phone exactly what I wanted them to do, I would start by writing down every single thing that had to be done, making that as concise as possible. That ended up becoming procedures and processes in place. And then, of course, that wasn't perfect on the get-go. They had lots of questions. I'd answer those questions, but instead of just answering them on the phone call, I'd make sure I wrote those down and implemented those into those procedures as well, so that the next person I trained wouldn't have those questions for me. So I guess I kind of optimized everything towards maybe spending lots of time initially, but down the line, not having to spend the time doing those things any further. So like I mentioned, like I didn't really have any like training or teachings, or I didn't even know about the term productized service, but it kind of just like happened that way over my desire of not having to repeat myself over and over and over, and spend those 10 plus hours every day in the future.
All right, so Kenny, you mentioned that you had a couple of businesses previously that you have sold and you've now moved on into a new thing, a new venture. What's it like, starting up a business and then making it successful and then selling it and moving on? How's that process go?
Yeah, so this is a process that I enjoy. I've done it twice already. I'll probably continue to do this in the foreseeable future, at least. When I started my businesses, though, I wasn't really thinking of exiting. That wasn't really a thought that crossed my mind. Initially, my thought process was that I wanted to create a business. I wanted that business to, make me some income, and then eventually I'd make it so that I become passive income through delegation. So I would delegate my tasks to other employees on the team. I try to scale it, but eventually I didn't want to be involved in the business. My goal was to separate myself from the business. And that's what I did initially for the first business. I was spending, like I mentioned, maybe just 3 hours per month on a difficult month, honestly. So it's very, very passive, and that was only possible because of delegation and the processes. But I got to a point where I was wondering whether or not I could personally grow that business any further. My expertise and my experience thus far had been on growing businesses beyond the point of being a very, very small business into one that was, not huge by any means, but not small anymore. At least it was turned into pretty much passive income, which just happened to be the kind of business that buyers want to purchase. Buyers, they generally want to purchase a business in which they're buying a business, not a job. They don't want to buy a business then spend 10 hours a day on that business themselves, for the most part, at least. The traditional or the typical like good business is one that the owner does not have to be directly involved in, already has the ability to be scaled, if not already has employees in place. So it just kind of happened that I built a business that was like that. So I was on vacation one day, and I was kind of thinking that, this is nice, but maybe I can optimize for my own future by selling that business, getting some cash from it, and then using that cash to start another business, and then repeating the process. So my ultimate goal was, to get passive income initially, but I figured that I could get a lump sum from that can then push me and accelerate me further in my future businesses. So that was kind of my thought process behind the first sale. And the second sale was a similar process. I wasn't really thinking again initially of selling the business, but it got to the point where it became a lot more passive for me. Initially, I was spending, many hours each week, each day on the business, but it got to the point where I was now spending, until recently, about an hour a day on the business. It grew to about 60 people on the team. It was already like relatively scaling well. I would say that all the processes were in place for scaling, both on the employee and the client side of things, to grow the team, I mean. But it got to a point where I wasn't really sure if I was adding so much value myself to the business. It was still growing, but nothing super crazy. And again, my experience so far, my success so far has been on growing, I guess, smaller businesses into, I guess a little bit bigger, but not huge businesses. And at this point, Delesign was getting to, 60 plus on the team. It was getting pretty huge. I didn't have any experience in that. I figured that it could be better for the entire team and the entire company to have someone that was more experienced in growing larger companies than myself, at least. And, of course, it was also beneficial for me if I can get a lump sum and then use that to then accelerate myself on future projects too. So that was my thought process. But of course, everyone has their own situations and thought process, and it may not be best for them. But like I mentioned, I just kind of got lucky the first time in building a business that happened to be pretty sellable. And then I, of course, took that into account on my second business, not thinking I would necessarily sell it, but still wanting to build it in a way in which it could be sellable so that I'd have that option at least in the future.
As a follow-up to that, I'm just wondering now, with two businesses behind you and you're probably going into something, how has this improved your flow? How has SPP improved your flow overall?
Yeah, SPP is awesome for many reasons. I'd say the first reason is because it's all packaged for you. It's all available from the go. You don't have to hire a developer who would then, spend months just to get the back end or the server or the portal ready for you to use for your clients. So for my initial business, the Instagram marketing business, I did things very, very low key. We didn't have a portal or anything. It was all basically done through email. The second business, I wanted to be a little more fancy, a little professional. So I hired a developer to do it all for me. And, that was great, of course, but it took honestly about like 5 months just to get a very basic like WordPress portal out there. And it wasn't really that great. And it was, not super professional. We eventually made things a little better, but that was over the process of about 2 years. So, it's obviously a very, very long time to get things to the point in which, SPP has things already on day one. So instead of spending 2 years, I could just, instantly from the get-go have all that available. The second thing I would mention is that SPP is always running well. I guess if you don't do things on your own, you maybe wouldn't realize the amount of work that goes into making a process or a platform like SPP. Things are always having to be updated. If you do update things, you have to make sure they're actually working well. So I learned that the hard way with my own business. Like we make an update to the website or to the portal, and then something would break and we wouldn't realize it until later on when clients were freaking out. So, it was honestly a huge stress for me, always making updates, because I wanted to make updates. I want to make things even better for our clients. But on the flip side, I was also hesitant to make updates because I knew that in the back of my head, like something was going to go wrong. It was just, I probably wouldn't find it, but a client would find it, and that would really stress me out. So that was one of my biggest stresses as a business owner, is I always want to make sure that things are as good as possible for the client. And that was really what would give me stress if I thought that maybe things weren't the case. And if you're doing things on your own, even if you're super meticulous and super careful, you're probably going to make mistakes. And I didn't want to have to worry about that or worry about our server going down or anything like that. And SPP has it all available from the get-go. So that's why for one of my new ventures now, instead of, having to worry about that, or instead of having to build a new portal from scratch and take, months to years to get it to the point in which SPP is at, I could just, pay a low flat monthly rate for SPP and get all the years of, testing experience and awesome building all in one place. So yeah, for me, it was no brainer. Honestly, I know it's not maybe perfect for everyone, but for majority of businesses, especially those doing a productized service, and especially ones that want to get things ready from day one, I mean, SPP is pretty much perfect at that.
Awesome. I'm glad to see that you're able to benefit this much from SPP. Thanks so much for the answer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think a lot of companies, they want to build their own portal or their own website, and then they find out how much issues it's actually giving them. Like you described, that's exactly what many people tell us. We came to SPP because we had so many issues with the custom development, which not only takes forever, but as you said, if something breaks, sometimes you don't notice, but your customers notice, and then you lose revenue, you lose customers, so it can get really expensive. That being said, with the new venture on SPP, I think you've used SPP before, or you've tried it, right? Have you noticed anything, how we've evolved over the years? Are there any features you really need for this new business specifically?
Yeah, so far it does everything that I need it to. This is my first time really going into it, and I've been using it now for about, I think around 4 months, 3 months or so with SPP with this new project. And yeah, so far it does everything that I need it to. My business is one which it has both recurring subscriptions as well as one-off payments, and SPP handles all of that. The biggest thing that I want for this business with SPP is the ability to manage our clients, view them all, have employees to also do the same thing, and SPP does that all for me. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it does everything that I needed to.
Perfect. One more question. You mentioned the recurring revenue. Is that something you would maybe recommend to other people who are interested in selling productized services to really focus on recurring revenue? And if yes, why exactly?
Yeah, I absolutely would. My past two businesses, they were exclusively recurring. Once I got them to being productized, they were exclusively recurring subscription-based models. The reason for that, I mean, there's only benefits, I would say, really, for this. You get the biggest benefit, of course, is you have consistent income that Of course, clients can still cancel. That's, of course, a given. But for the most part, that clients, as long as you provide them with value, will continue. And the amount that they'll pay you. So you don't have to worry about potentially hiring someone and then realizing later on you don't have the income to support them, or your budget isn't up to date because of that. So with this, you have a consistent income flow that you can then use to budget out your future expenses. And generally with a productized service like this that's recurring, the client will pay you upfront too. So you would have that money upfront, which you can then use to further grow your business or whatever you think is the best use of that capital. So I think there's only benefits for that, especially because, like if you think about it, like everyone on your team is, if you're hiring full-time people, that is, they're also being paid on a recurring subscription basis essentially by their salary. So you want to match your revenue with that, of course, too. So I think it only makes sense as long as you can do that. And, as we're learning now, like pretty much every business, every service business that is, can have some productized aspect to it as well. And I would encourage anyone that hasn't tried it yet to at least try it. There's many benefits of doing this. And I learned initially the hard way at first that there's many issues with offering a customized traditional agency service type approach. And if you want to scale, if you want to grow your business, if you want to potentially sell it too in the future, there's many benefits that come exclusively from making a productized service.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right, so Kenny, since you've already had two businesses behind you that you've already sold, I was wondering if you had any tips or any information to provide on selling a business. Like, what's the process? How does that go? How is it?
Yeah, definitely. So my experience with that has been through a broker, a brokerage company that specializes in selling online internet businesses similar to mine. So there's various ways of doing it. You can, of course, do it yourself. You can try to hire a one-of consultant individual to sell it for you. You can try those free online platforms that connect you with buyers. But my experience as being someone who was not experienced with selling a business prior to my sales, I was much more open to the idea of finding a company that specialized in that because I didn't want to get scammed. I didn't want to, do all the things that potentially could cause harm to myself or the business, or, ones in which I would maybe get gypped off, or I would, get scammed or whatever. So I wanted to avoid all that, and I didn't mind paying a premium for that assurance. So I went with a company that specializes in that. So because of that, the process was very easy to follow along with. How it works is that you pretty much set up a call with the company. They go through the business with you in a very brief setting. They give you a general estimate of what they think the business could sell for. And then from there, assuming everything is good with you, you proceed with them. They gather your financial information of the company. They use that to make a report, prospectus. And then once that's all finalized, which could take anywhere from 2 weeks to even a month, once that's finalized, they'll then send that out to the list of buyers. That gets sent out. You get some interest. If you get some interest, some calls will be scheduled with you, the brokerage company, and the potential buyer. You talk with them. They have some questions, of course. That goes off, over the phone virtually as well as through email. And then you're looking at that point, maybe around like 1.5 to 2 months, by which point you should have some offers. You'll discuss the offers with your company. They'll get back to you. And then you're looking probably about 2.5 months to 3 months with this process of actually selling your business. So that's pretty much how the process works in a nutshell. But in regards to actually like how do you optimize for that? I think it's all the things we discussed already in the terms of you want to make sure your business is scalable. It's non-involving you directly, or at least it's not requiring your full-time effort directly. It's one in which there are employees in the business. So you want a business that is scalable, that doesn't require inputs. And like I mentioned, you want a business that can be sold to someone who can buy a business and not buy a full-time job. So those are the main factors really to get the most optimal purchase price. And generally your purchase price is going to be based on different factors. One of the biggest factors is going to be of course, your income that you're taking home. So like not just the revenue, of course, but also like the amount that you, the owner, take home after all expenses. Generally, it'll be a multiple of that, like a yearly multiple. So it could be around like 2 to 4 times the yearly annual profit that you take out of the business. That's generally what your business will be sold for. Higher if it's growing rapidly, if it has those things we mentioned of scalability and involvement. So that's generally how the process works and the expectations of it. I think like the biggest reason you want to do that though is because maybe you think that you can use your time better in another venture. For me specifically, like I mentioned, like it wasn't really taking up too much time for me in terms of my daily involvement, but it was taking up lots of mental energy. I was still thinking about the business in the background while eating. I was always thinking about it before I go to sleep. I was thinking about it, and that can be stressful. Even if things are delegated, you're probably still thinking about it to some extent. And I felt that was kind of getting in the way of me focusing my full efforts on future ventures as well. So even though it wasn't really like actively taking up too much time, it was still like passively taking up mental energy. And that was one reason why I sold the business. But you could have many reasons for selling it too, because maybe you want to spend more time with family, or maybe because you want to use those funds for other ventures. So many reasons to sell it. Even if you're not considering it, I definitely suggest you at least start thinking about potentially selling in the future and how you can get to that point. And it just so happens that if you make a sellable business, you're also making one in which you can separate yourself from that business. So I think it's all a positive exercise all around anyways.
All right. So, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really nice talking to you and learning about your business. We truly appreciate your time. And if you have any sign-off notes, you can hit us with them right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, it's a pleasure to be on here. I really enjoyed speaking about this and hope that I provided value to those who are listening to this. If people want to reach out to me, I would love to help out any way I can. You can check me out on Twitter. So look me up online, essentially, you'll find me. But my website, in which I kind of go over what I've done, what I'm doing, is my last name, Schumacher.jp. I go over the details of what I've done, and I just try to make things as transparent as possible. And like I mentioned, I'm more than happy to help anyone. So feel free to reach out to me, through my website, through online, whatever, through LinkedIn. I'd be happy to help out any way I can.
Awesome.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.